Heroines and Harridans, your latest book, introduces the reader to some rather robust characters in history, some of whom have been forgotten by the history books. Why do you think that is?
On the whole, in history, it's men who write history books. It's his story, and women don't get much of a look in, and that's been the case for time immemorial, frankly. We know, for example, who attended the Last Supper. We have no idea who cooked it. I'm going to guess it was some woman who slaved away at it. And there are lots of women that I wanted to include. Unfortunately, we couldn't get them all in. This is a good thing, though, because we did write another one.
How did you research the book?
The research was frankly done in a slapdash fashion. That's the absolute truth of it. I had women that I wanted to write about. I asked Sandy Nightingale if she wanted to do their picture. She said yes, and then we started the research. A lot of it, sadly, is stuff that was already in the nooks and crannies of my mind, which is an untidy place.
Which women of today do you think will be remembered by future generations?
There's lots of women who will be remembered today, not all in a good way. Margaret Thatcher, for example, I think is probably not going to stand the test of time. Then there are lots of astonishing women like Helena Kennedy, the human rights lawyer, who I think will be remembered for having done amazing things, and great writers like P.D. James, the astonishing crime writer, Maya Angelou. Actors, Judi Dench probably is somebody that will always be remembered, partly from the Bond films, which may not be, in her view, her best oeuvre.
You mentioned P.D. James, not to be confused with E.L. James.
I doubt that E.L. James will be remembered by anybody apart from the very closest members of the James family.
From the book, let's talk characters. Who's your favourite Harridan?
My favourite Harridan is Queen Samurama, I think it's pronounced. She was Queen of Assyria quite a long time ago, so we don't have to worry about her. And she became queen by marrying the king. Always a good way forward. Look at Kate Middleton. And she married a king called Ninus. And anyway, one day Ninus must have adored her. He said, "I tell you what, you know it'd be a laugh. You know it'd be a real laugh is I'll let you rule for a day and do whatever you like." She said, "Oh, fantastic." They got up on the morning that she decided she wanted to rule, and she promptly had him executed and ruled for the next 45 years. I love that. I think I'm neither a heroine nor a Harridan, so I don't feel I identify with any of them. The heroine that I like the best in the entire book is Bessie Coleman, who I think should be remembered, is remembered in parts of Chicago. She was the first African-American to hold a pilot's license. Not just the first African-American woman, the first African-American at all. She came from a fantastically poor family in Texas. She was the 10th of 13 children. She had very little education. She wanted to be a pilot. How great is that? And nobody wanted to teach a black woman to be a pilot. It could only be done in France in 1916. And so she taught herself French and went to France and became a pilot. Sadly, she was killed in an aviation accident when she was only 36. But this girl who had come from nothing, and it was, after all, an African-American, very difficult times, but way before any kind of Rosa Parks initiated liberation of the African-Americans. By the time she died, 10,000 people attended her funeral. She was a heroine. This
book is a co-authorship, really. Tell us a little bit about Sandy Nightingale's illustrations and, tell us your favourites.
Yes, I love her drawings. She's very self-effacing. Whenever we get together, we cry with laughter. And it's really, really critical, not that people read the text, but that people pay attention to the drawings and paintings, because there's always more in the detail. There's things in the background that you won't have noticed the first time you looked at the pictures. This book, worth buying because Sandy Nightingale did the illustrations and not because I had anything to do with it.
Pick one of the characters from the book, and if you could give them any advice, what would you give them?
Queen Elizabeth I, don't become queen. I think it's a nasty business. She did some good things. She helped Raleigh, who invented the bicycle, and she invented Shakespeare. But on the whole, I think, don't be queen. Set up a nice little cake shop somewhere and just relax. My advice for today's women is do not believe those women who tell you that feminism is no longer necessary. I'm afraid there is much work to be done. Women of the world, according to the United Nations, do 66% of the work and own 1% of the world's assets. Time for a change, I think.
Perfect, let's leave it there. Thanks, Sandy.